Hello, welcome to part 13 of level 1 of the of my electronic music production with Ableton Live course. So congratulations if you've made it this far, and I've not bored you all to death. So in this one we're going to look at a bit more in depth at MIDI clip editing. So specifically looking at quantization, velocity, and note placement, just to tighten up any timing issues on our grooves, and also to give our grooves a more human feel, if that's the sort of the thing that we want. I mentioned in previous videos, I think when we recorded the drum part in, I know the timing was out a little bit, so I said we'd look at how to deal with issues of bad timing, which is the quantization section. And then on the clip where I've actually written the notes in, we'll look at kind of humanizing that a little bit. So this first one, my clip, this is the one I've just quickly recorded just now with some dubious timing. So if I put the metronome on, you'll hear how shocking it is. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of hear that yeah, that's really bad all over the place. So these hi-hats are late, kick drums late, and everything's a little bit late. So first thing we would do is we would want to quantize that to make it sound like we can actually record the drums and play the drums. So basically, if you quantize something, it means to correct the timing of the musical events based on specific note values. So in Ableton Live, we have the option to quantize either selected individual notes or the whole clip. So if nothing is selected and we quantize it, it will quantize basically everything in the clip. If I select just say 3 notes, so we selected those, it would just quantize those. Okay, so just bear that in mind when you're quantizing. So first of all, let's have a look at the quantize settings. So they're up in the edit menu, so we can go from the edit menu and we've got quantize settings here, or we can use the keyboard shortcut, which on a PC is Control Shift and U, and on a Mac I believe is Command Shift U. So if we click on that, we get the settings here. So you can choose the note value that you want to quantize to. Generally, I will leave it on 16ths. That usually works for me. You can also you can choose whether you quantize the start of the note or the end of the note. Generally, particularly with drums, it doesn't matter about quantizing the end of the note, so I just have that on start. And then we have the amount here. So 100% will snap everything exactly to the grid. If we lower that down, it won't quantize it quite as much, if that makes sense. So they are our quantize settings. So let's just quantize everything first of all, and see what result that we get. So there's the groove at the moment. So for quantizing it, again, you can go edit, and you can just click on quantize here, or you can press Control and U or Command U. So let's just quantize it. Watch all the notes on the screen, okay? And they have all kind of snapped to the grid. Now, you get mixed results sometimes depending on how bad your timing is. Let's just have a listen to it. Okay, now what's going to happen is I'm just going to undo that quantize. Right, because these notes here were so late, they've actually moved to that second 16th note, that E in the and. Same with this bass drum here. See, that one actually should be in there. So sometimes it's a little, if you're really out on your timing, it can be a little bit hit and miss. And you might have to just go in and adjust your notes one at a time. So let's just quantize it again. So I'm going to do Control U. So basically what we can see is all of these, to start with, need to be shifted along there. And that one would want to be there. Okay, so it's kind of done its job, but it's tried to be a little bit too clever. All right, so if we play it now. Oops, sorry, that one should be on that one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift a few of these about a little bit, just to ruin the timing, and I'll quantize it again, and I'll show you. Hopefully, it will. Okay, so if I listen to it now. Okay, so that's obviously, you can hear that's out. So if I Control U, okay, everything snaps back to the grid. Now if I undo that and we go to our quantize settings again and do it at say 70% around, okay, it's not going to snap everything exactly to the grid. So it's done it straight away. So you can see that one, if I zoom right in, Okay, so that snare, there's a slight gap there. Okay, if it was 100%, it would have been there. Same with that kick. So it's basically, it's just down to the intensity of how much it snaps to the grid. So it's just down to personal preference and the feel that you want to get. A lower setting is going to probably get a more natural feel. If you want a robotic machine kind of sound, go for 100%. Kind of music I do for electronic dance music stuff, you want it exactly on the beat. So generally I will always quantize to 100%, but like I say, it's down to the genre of music that you're doing. So if I wanted to say, if I got just one note out, if I wanted to quantize just that, all I would do is highlight it and then Control U, and it would do just that note. And you can have one note or you can select several notes. Remember, all you got to do is hold down Shift and click on the notes that you want, and it will quantize those accordingly depending on the ones that you've selected. So yeah, what you might want to do is kind of adjust the feel a little bit. So let's go on to this second clip. So let's give this a play. Okay, so let's just turn the metronome off, because basically all I did with this one is I wrote in the I programmed those in, so everything is exactly on the grid. So let's say we want to give this a little bit more of a human feel. Sorry, just give me one sec. Kind of the important thing really is probably your kick drum you would want to still always keep that, particularly on beat 1, because that's going to set where beat 1 is. But the snare drums we could kind of move like a little bit later in the beat, or a little, let's just turn the grid off a sec so I can move the notes around a little bit, or a little bit earlier in the grid. So if I make them a little bit earlier, not so it sounds out of time, but so this is all about note placement rather than quantization. It's going to give the groove kind of a more urgent sort of feel. Okay, so it's still sounding in time, but it's going to give it a slightly different feel. Okay, and then we could go kind of a little bit later, which is going to give it a more laid back, lazy kind of feel. Okay, it's not the best groove to illustrate that, but that's what you want to do, because if you analyze any drummer playing, they're not going to play every note, you know, exactly in time. There's going to be slight deviances of where they place the note. And if you think of a drummer like Travis Barker in Blink-182, he will play kind of like with a lot of urgency. So his beats are probably going to be slightly before the beat. So his snare drums might kind of be there. Okay, so it kind of gives it more urgency. If you think of somebody very laid back, Charlie Watts from Rolling Stones, you know, it might be over here somewhere, and that gives it, if you want like a sloppy, lazier kind of feel, you're going to position your notes around there. But what I say is, when you're kind of moving your notes around and quantizing as well, try and get your kick drum, certainly your kick drum on beat 1. Your others you could move around, but try and get your kick drum on beat 1 nice and tight, because that's going to sort of set where the beat is for the listener. So yeah, we covered that just looking at note placement a little bit, which is sort of an extension of quantization. Just talking as well a little bit about the grid. As I mentioned previously, if you want to move your notes around freely, you need to turn the grid off down here. So what you do is you right click down here, and you've got different settings here, which let's just cover these. So the adaptive grid, let's just click it back onto 8ths for now. Well, let's just go on medium. Okay, as you zoom in and out, if you watch down here, this will change. Okay, so as I zoom in, you can see it changes your resolution of your grid depending on how much you've zoomed in or out. So that's the adaptive one, which is quite useful if you want it to change as you zoom in or out. And if we have it on a fixed grid, let's say we have it fixed on 8ths, and hold on, let's turn that off. Yeah, so you can see we've got that tick next to that. So when I zoom in, however much I zoom in, it's not going to change. It's always going to stay on 8th notes. So again, it's just down to personal preference, really, how you want to operate with that. Generally, I think I will have mine on a fixed grid. But yeah, so it's down to however you want to do it. If we want to deactivate individual notes, we can also do that. So let's say we want to get rid of some kick drums, but we want to sort of audition what it sounds like without deleting them. All you do is highlight the note and press the 0 button, and that will deactivate it. So I've just deactivated that one. So you can kind of take them in and out as you wish without deleting them. Because if you're taking a lot of notes out, you might not remember what you've deleted. Obviously, you've got your undo button, but you may make other changes that will affect as well. So that's quite useful if you want to just see what a groove sounds like by taking one note out without having to delete it. So that's the 0 button. Just highlight the note, press 0. So yeah, like I say, it's down to your personal preference of what you want your groove to sound like. Move your notes around depending on where you want them to be. And then the final thing on this bit is velocity, which we've looked at a little bit previously. Again, depending on your controller, when you record, if you're recording stuff off, for example, off push, that is velocity sensitive, so you can get more feel with that. If you're programming things in from your computer keyboard, it will be a fixed velocity all the time. So this one I recorded from my computer keyboard, and you can see the velocity is fixed here. And the C and V button on your computer keyboard will set the fixed velocity. So if you can see down here, as I'm pressing V, it's going up. Okay. So that must have been probably on something like 100, whatever it was there. And then the C button will take it down. So if I have that set at 100, everything I play in off the computer keyboard will come in at a velocity of 100. So again, if you've got a MIDI controller that will send out a velocity information, that's not going to be so much of a problem. As well, if we program notes in, they're all going to have the same velocity, which again can sound very robotic. Depending on the genre of music that you play, you may want that. But again, if you're wanting a more human feel, you would want to change some of the velocities. I did cover this a little bit in previous lessons, but I was going to look at it in a little bit more detail. Because again, a human drummer isn't going to hit the drum with the same velocity every single time. There's going to be slight differences. So one way of doing it, you can go in and just in each individual note, you can just move it slightly like that, you know, just sort of randomly. Which just picking things out at random, which will give it, it's very subtle, you won't hardly notice it, but it will make a difference. You can also hold on, let's get rid of that, we'll do that in a second. So yeah, you can go in, which is a bit of a painstaking thing to do, but you know, if you want to be really specific about your feel of your grooves, then you can go through every single note and do that, which I looked at in the previous I think in a couple of lessons ago on this one, we looked at a little bit about that. But let's say we want to do a crescendo. So if you don't know what a crescendo is, that's where our notes get gradually louder. So let's say on beat 4, we're going to have, now let's go from beat 3. We're going to have 2 beats of 16th notes on the snare drum. So a quick way of putting your notes in, I can't remember if I've covered this or not, but if you highlight it, Control D, that's going to duplicate them. So at the moment, okay, all those snare drums are the same volume. Now I want those to start quiet and gradually get louder. Now I could kind of do this and go, all right, yeah, let's get that one a little bit louder, and you know, and it's going to take forever to do all of that, particularly if you've got a really, really long fill. So there are a couple of easy, quick ways of doing this. Let's just get that back so they're all the same velocity. So if I highlight all these notes, easiest way, just lasso them all like that. Now I could use the pencil tool up here and just sort of start down here and then kind of try and draw a diagonal line like that, which is a little bit hit and miss. Okay, but it works. You know, you can hear those getting louder. But a more useful way to get a more specific, like a very smooth build-up in sound, there is a little trick you can use to do this. If you hold down the Control key or the Command key when we're down here, okay, you can see, and then you click and you can draw a line, right? Let's just get rid of that for now. So I'm going to start right at the bottom. So I'm pressing down Control now, and you can see my line appears. So I can get a nice line going from basically nothing up to full volume. Oops, sorry. Let it go the wrong way. Yeah. Click down here. There we go. Where's my line? There we go. Okay, so you can let go of your mouse before your button. You can see then it's our notes follow. Just going to get rid of these because we wouldn't have these playing in a drum fill anyway. Our notes now will follow that line, so we get an exact build-up in sound. Okay, which is a very, very useful way of drawing a quick line. So we could do it the other way around. Let's do what's called a diminuendo. We're going to get quieter. So if we do that, okay, instantly it's going to go the other way around. Okay, so good little tip that if you want to do, particularly if you've got like a really long fill, good way of doing that. What else we want to cover? We can also move notes around. So if you highlight a note, if you use the arrow keys on your keyboard, if you highlight it and go up and down. So if you want to kind of audition different sounds, okay, you can move them up and down easily like that. We can also move them left and right. Okay, and they will move dependent, if I remember rightly, on the grid size. Yes, so if we've got eighth notes, you can see it's moving across an eighth note each time. Okay, so left and right will move by the grid size. So let's make that 16th note, so we might want to shift that over to there. We're going to try it on there. Okay, so useful way of just moving notes around as well. One final thing is, just going back to quantizing, we also have the option to actually quantize the notes as we record, which is actually quite useful because it saves you going in and having to quantize your notes after you've recorded them. And that again is in the edit menu. We have record quantization. So at the moment it's set to no quantization. Generally I would have it on 16th note quantization, and then it will quantize based on your quantize settings. So if I now record something in here, hang on, let me stop this from playing. Let's try that again. Okay, so that should, now I'm going to play it back. Let's get the metronome on. Okay, so, ooh. Okay, so again, it's tried to be a bit too clever on these here. It's moved them along that way a bit too much. So sometimes you just have to go in and change them like that. If you're playing a groove like that as well, you might want to kind of quantize it to, well, not so much like that because there are some 16ths in there, but you might want to change your quantize settings to 8th notes as well. But record quantization is quite useful, particularly if you want everything to be exactly quantized like that, so you don't have to go back in and quantize it again later. Okay, so hopefully there's some useful tips and tricks in there for you, some stuff you may not have thought of for your own productions, particularly from your drums, to give them a more human feel. Works the same with melodic instruments, for example, a piano, you know, so you can mess about with your velocities and your timing on those as well. So thanks for watching. I will see you in part 14, and usual things, please like and subscribe, share the videos around. If you've got any questions or comments, stick them in the box below, and also if you've got any suggestions or any requests for future videos, stick them in there as well, and I will do my best to sort those out for you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Cheers.